Yorkshire, the largest county in the UK, an area widely regarded for incredible landscapes and beautiful views. There's a reason it's called God's own country. This is where, for the last 24 years, I've called home. Well, sadly, I didn't grow up in the luscious rolling hills of the historic towns you've just seen. I grew up slap bang in the centre of Leeds, West Yorkshire. My experience of Yorkshire has always been bustling cities, people crammed in like sardines, and red brick estates as far as the eye can see. To make it worse, growing up obsessed with wildlife, I hated that I had to live in a place where the wildest it got was someone's cat in my mum's garden. But it turns out I was wrong. I was massively wrong. And in this series of mini documentaries, I'm going to turn off the city lights and step back into that natural side of Yorkshire's Wild West. Our first species to cover is the European otter, otherwise known as Lutra lutra. This, in its earliest translation, means of water or water animals. This is such an apt name, as they are becoming the key species in the UK's waterways. Now, what I will say is they're not exactly synonymous with West Yorkshire. In fact, roughly 90% of otters in the UK live in Scotland. In comparison, West Yorkshire has that few that we can't even provide a rough population size. So, you're probably thinking, how can this be the number one species that you're going to discuss? And it's a fair point, to be honest. But the reason is because they are on the rise and they show how West Yorkshire can become a hub for native species conservation. European otters are the key to a healthy freshwater ecosystem as they're an incredible predator and they control the population of fish and aquatic invertebrates. In the UK, we have a big aquatic invertebrate problem in the invasive signal crayfish. Otters are a big factor in controlling signal crayfish. We know this due to recent studies on otter poo, which show that they are eating them in high quantities. This benefits the environment as they carry a deadly plague which impacts their native cousins, the white-clawed crayfish. Due to their impressive size, they have also been seen eating their cousins too. As great as the otter's crustacean feast is, unless the population of European otters has a dramatic baby boom, it's very unlikely that they will be able to fully curb the crayfish crisis we have on our hands. But it is a good start and shows the positive impact of having otters in our waters. Until the 1800s, otters were common throughout rural Britain, but in the 1950s and 60s, they went through a rapid decline. And after being a staple in the UK countryside, they became locally extinct throughout large parts of south and central England. This was due to a number of reasons, including human population increases, use in the fur trade, persecution as agricultural pests, and lastly, the ever declining water quality in UK rivers due to chemical waste. This is still a prominent issue to this day. But in 1981, the government passed a monumental law called the Wildlife and Countryside Act. This act protects otters as well as countless other species from capture, killing, as well as nesting site disruptions. Following this, the population initially stabilised, and over the past 45 years, the population has gradually started to increase. The increased amount of otters in our waterways is massive, and having them back in the water around Yorkshire is incredible, as it signifies that efforts to improve our aquatic ecosystems are working, and in small pockets, the quality of water is back to being livable. Don't get me wrong, Sightings are still rare, but with every passing year, they are more present around West Yorkshire, even being seen in urban areas such as Leeds and Bradford. While otters are making a quiet comeback, this next species has been making a much louder impression on the Wild West. The ring-necked parakeet, or Psittacula cremeri, are one of the fastest growing populations of birds in the UK. And once again, they're not exactly what you would consider a staple of West Yorkshire's wildlife. You'd assume that a bright green parrot would be perfectly adapted to living in Africa or Asia. And you'd be spot on. These birds are native throughout West Africa and stretching all the way across through to India, living in any habitat available to them, including forests, wetlands, and urban areas. Due to the miracle of migration, it's quite common for birds to have a wide range, and in the UK, we have species which fly across the globe, finding new homes during the winter, such as the swallow, which travels over 6,000 miles to South Africa during these winter months. However, parakeets were not a natural migration to Britain. The official origin of the first wild parakeets in the UK is not fully known, but as with most things, humans are probably to blame. In the mid-1800s, the cage bird trade was booming, and a good-looking bird like this was high on everyone's wish list, with individuals being trafficked from mainly India. As with every trafficking of animals, there is an inevitable escape, and this would lead to the UK's first recorded sighting in 1855. After this, sightings were not common, but throughout the 1920s up to the 1950s, there were some recorded sightings. This coincided with public fear of captive birds due to outbreaks of parrot fever. And even though parrot fever caused very few deaths, it may have led to widespread release of captive birds. As said, the origin is not 100% confirmed, and this has sparked some conspiracy theories to emerge. This included escaping from a movie set which used the birds during filming, and even the outbreak being caused by the result of Jimi Hendrix releasing his beloved pets in 1968. Whilst it's a fun story, by the mid-60s, ring-necked parakeets were already observed breeding in the wild, meaning this release will have had very little impact. By the 1970s, they had begun to spread from London throughout the UK. This, coupled with more captive releases, meant that there were newer, stronger genetics in the wild, and by 1999, there was no way of stopping them. Fast forward to present day, and there is an overabundance of parakeets, with up to 85,000 individuals, according to the British Trust of Ornithology, and an estimated population rise by between 7 to 15% per year. The big question is, what makes this species able to conquer every habitat it finds? To answer that, we come here, the calm and peaceful historic landmark village of Saltaire, known for its idyllic lifestyle, which has been home in recent years to the chirps of parakeets. The locals treasure them, but little do they know this isn't the neighbour you want in your village. Surprisingly, parakeets are a habitat dominator. They achieve this through secondary cavity nesting, in which they bully smaller birds out of their homes and steal the hollowed out sections of trunk that they have made. This is due to their impressive size. Because of this, they can evict smaller native species such as starlings and woodpeckers, robbing them of their homes and taking hold of the natural resources within that area. Alongside this, they have a generally disruptive attitude and make large amounts of noise, which further drives away native species. As you would expect, this is having a generally negative impact on the local environment, with studies showing that populations are declining in native species. However, some research does suggest that there are positives to having parakeets within an urban landscape. Mainly, as they are bringing tourists into green spaces and are improving the public's care for British wildlife, if you can call it that. The public may not be engaging for conservation purposes, and most likely are only there to get a picture for their Instagram. But it could still have a knock-on positive impact, as the parakeets are acting as a flagship species and could raise awareness for conservation issues faced in the UK. With populations rising and the public affection increasing, the parakeet population may continue to skyrocket and be detrimental to the point where action is required. As of 2025, this species is not listed on the Invasive Species Act, but could be added due to its widespread distribution and its impact. If this were to happen, it would make it illegal to breed, release, or sell this species. Although they are not on the list, there has been some previous talks of small-scale culling of this species as recently as 2021. So, with growth expected to rise, what would you do? Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.